Thanks for joining me today. We're going to look at an introduction to equality and diversity law. The aims of the presentation are to understand why equality and diversity matters to the organisation, explore equality and diversity legislation, and explore the terminology associated with equality and diversity. Why equality and diversity really matters. You need to ensure legal compliance. There are many benefits to the business, and it's a public sector duty. Really, you are looking at fostering good relations. Equal opportunities is an equal access to goods, facilities, services and employment. An opportunity to receive services in a manner that the individual needs are taken into consideration and any barriers to the service is removed. To be treated with dignity and respect. Diversity is about embracing difference and recognising the benefits difference can bring. Where there are two or more people, you have diversity. We are all different from one another. It goes beyond complying with legislation. It's based on good business practice. Terminology. Stereotyping is when a person has preconceived ideas and notions about an individual or a situation. Prejudice is opinion formed with no foundation in knowledge, thought or reason and is usually very negative. Discrimination is where a person or an organisation acts on a prejudice and treats a person or people less favourably without a justifiable reason. The legal framework for this, it all began with with many different types of legislation. There was the Equal Pay Act of 1970, the Equality Act of 2010 was replaced the following acts: the Sex Discrimination Act, the Sex Discrimination Act Gender Reassignment Regulations, Employment Equality, Sexual Orientation, the Race Relations Act, the Disability Discrimination Act, the Employment Equality, Religion or Belief Regulations, Equality Age Regulations. There are also other acts to bear in mind, which are the Welsh Language Act and the Human Rights Act, which we'll go on to talk about later. The Equality Act of 2010, which is the current equality and diversity legislation, has a number of protected characteristics. These are gender, race, disability, age, sexual orientation, gender reassignment, religion or belief, marital status and civil partnerships, and maternity or pregnancy. The definitions of these protected characteristics are race, colour, nationality, ethnicity or national origins. Disability. A person has a disability if he or she has a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on the person's ability to carry out their day-to-day activities. Gender reassignment is a process of transitioning from one gender to another. Intent or are undergoing or have undergone gender reassignment is also covered. Religion or belief. Religion has the meaning usually given to it, but belief includes religious and philosophical beliefs such as lack of belief, e.g. atheism. Generally, a belief should affect your life choices or the way in which you live for it to be included within the definition. Marriage and civil partnership are quite self-explanatory. It covers people who are married and people who are in a civil partnership. Maternity and pregnancy. Maternity is covered throughout the pregnancy and up to 26 weeks after giving birth. Direct discrimination is treating somebody less favourably because of a protected characteristic, i.e. a company refusing to recruit a person simply because they're gay. Direct discrimination by association is when others link an individual's friend or family who possesses a protected characteristic. For instance, June has been offered a promised promotion. When she tells her boss that her mother, who lives with her, has had a stroke, the promotion is withdrawn because the boss thinks that June will not have time to concentrate on her new position due to her caring responsibilities. This will be covered. Direct discrimination by perception, when others perceive that the individual possesses a protected characteristic. For example, Jim, who is 45, is not allowed to represent his company at an international meeting because the MD thinks he's in his 20s and is too young. Jim has been discriminated against on the basis of age. Indirect discrimination. This one's slightly more complicated. A policy or criteria or practice that, although applied equally to all, treats the individual to a detriment because of their protected characteristic. I'll explain. For example, requiring all people who apply for a certain job to sit a test in a particular language, even though that language is not necessary for the job. Or B, providing a catering service without providing vegetarian options, only ham or meat options. Consider that they have been discriminated against because of a combination of protected characteristics can bring a claim of dual discrimination with up to 2 protected characteristics. There are, of course, occupational requirements where exceptions apply. Things like priests, monks, nuns, rabbis and ministers are exempt from this. Actors and models in a film, television and the fashion industry. Special employment training programs aimed at ethnic minorities, ex-offenders, young adults, the long-term unemployed or people with a physical or learning difficulty. Employment where there's cultural sensitivities, such as a documentary where male victims of domestic violence are needed to be interviewed by a male researcher, or a gay men's domestic violence helpline would also be covered under this. Defence. Justifying the discrimination. Legitimate aim is the reason behind the discrimination. The reason must not be discriminatory in itself, and it must be a genuine or real reason. Here are some examples of legitimate aims. Health and safety and welfare of individuals, running an efficient service, requirements of the business, and the desire to make a profit. This applies to indirect discrimination and direct age discrimination. A resource from this can be found on the Citizens Advice Bureau's website, which is very handy to look at due to the complexity of this. Harassment is another thing covered under the Equality Act of 2010. A harasses B if engages in unwanted conduct, engages in unwanted conduct of a sexual nature related to a relevant protected characteristic, purpose, effect or violating dignity, or creating hostile degrading, humiliating or offensive environment. Victimization, on the other hand, is defined as treating somebody less favourably than others because they have, in good faith, complained about the treatment or have given evidence in support of the other's complaint. The employment complaint can be formal within the organisation, or even if somebody's taken somebody to an employment tribunal previously. Disability discrimination is covered in a number of areas via direct discrimination, discrimination arising from the disability itself, and even indirect discrimination. Disability discrimination, you have a duty to make reasonable adjustments to the person. Adjustments to the workplace to improve access or layout, giving some of the disabled's duties to another person, i.e. employing a temp, transferring the disabled person to fill a vacancy, changing their work hours to be flexible, offering job share, starting later or finishing earlier if that makes it easier for the person, disability or work limiting health condition, time off, e.g. for treatment, assessment or rehabilitation, training for disabled workers and their colleagues. Equal Pay Act has been in for a number of years. It covers the equal treatment in terms of, and conditions of their employment contract if they're employed to do like work. Work that is the same or broadly similar. Work related as equivalent under a job evaluation study, which has shown the work to be related and comparable. Work to be found of equal value in terms of effort, skill or decision making. Pay is also covered under equality and diversity legislation to say that we have the right to basic pay, non-discretionary bonuses, overtime rates and allowances, performance-related benefits, severance and redundancy pay, access to pension schemes, benefits under pension schemes, hours of work, company cars, sick pay, fringe benefits such as travel allowances are all covered within this law. There's also the human rights based approach, which is covered by the Human Rights Act, which offers the right to a fair trial, no punishment without law, respect for your private and family life, freedom of thought, of religion and belief, freedom of expression, the freedom to marry and start a family, and the right to an education. The Welsh Language Act, the language on the basis of equality with the English language in the public sector is where that's covered. It's best practice to carry it out in everyday business, and more than often now it's a tender requirement for a lot of the tenders which are out there. In summary, we've been through this and we've defined equality and diversity. We've understood the basic elements of the Single Equality Act of 2010. We've looked at protected characteristics within the Act, and we've explored the different types of discrimination. Thank you for listening to today's training on equality and diversity law. I hope to see you again soon.